It was exactly 7 days before Isabella's wedding, a date she had been counting down to for months. She had always believed that she was one of the luckiest women alive. Daniel, her fiancé, was everything she thought she wanted: handsome, charming, and endlessly attentive. He had been her friend before her lover, and that friendship had blossomed into a romance she believed was unshakable. Their love story had been the kind people envied. They met at a mutual friend's dinner party 3 years ago. From a very first conversation, there had been an undeniable spark. Daniel's sense of humor and warm smile drew her in. In time, they became inseparable, building a bond she thought could withstand anything. Melissa had been Isabella's best friend since university. They had survived heartbreaks together, celebrated successes, and shared dreams over countless cups of coffee. Melissa was going to be her maid of honor, the one who would stand by her side as she vowed to spend her life with Daniel. To Isabella, these two people were the pillars of her world. That Saturday afternoon, she decided to do something sweet. Daniel had mentioned he'd be resting at home after a long work week. She planned to surprise him with his favorite lunch, a homemade seafood pasta, and a heartfelt letter she had been writing for days. The letter wasn't just words. It was a deep confession of her love, her excitement for their future, and her gratitude for the man she was about to marry. She got into her car, humming softly as she drove through the quiet streets. The sun cast a golden glow, and every moment felt filled with promise. When she reached his apartment building, she noticed his car parked outside. Everything seemed normal. She climbed the familiar staircase, her heels tapping softly against the concrete. As she approached the door, she heard laughter. At first, she smiled. Daniel was probably on the phone with a friend. But then there was another voice, a woman's voice, light, teasing, intimate. Her smile faded. She froze at the sound of Daniel's deep laugh. Different this time, softer, almost flirtatious. Then came the unmistakable sound of lips meeting. Her heart pounded in her chest. She told herself she must be imagining it, but instinct told her otherwise. She reached for the doorknob. It was unlocked. Slowly, she pushed the door open. The sight that met her eyes shattered her world in an instant. Daniel was there, shirt unbuttoned, hair tousled. Melissa was wrapped around him, her lipstick smudged, her hand resting on his chest. They looked like they had been caught in the middle of something far more intimate than conversation. For a moment, no one moved. Isabella stood in the doorway, her eyes fixed on them, her breath shallow. The container of pasta slipped from her hand and hit the floor, sauce spilling across the tiles. The letter she had poured her heart into fluttered to the ground like a final, cruel punctuation to the moment. Melissa looked away, shame etched on her face. Daniel's mouth opened, but no sound came. How long? Isabella's voice was low, steady, almost eerily calm. They hesitated. How long? She repeated, her voice sharper this time. Daniel swallowed hard. A few months, he admitted, barely above a whisper. Her heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest. Months. That meant while she had been choosing flowers and sending invitations, they had been sneaking around behind her back. She turned her gaze to Melissa, the woman who had once been like a sister to her. You sat with me while I cried over men who hurt me. You swore you'd protect me from anyone who would break my heart. And now here you are. Melissa's eyes welled with tears, but Isabella saw no remorse, only guilt at being caught. She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as anger and heartbreak fought for dominance. I don't need explanations, she said finally. I just need to leave before I forget who I am. Without another word, she turned and walked out. Daniel called her name, his voice desperate, but she didn't stop. Each step down the hallway felt heavy, but with every stride, the weight on her shoulders began to shift. That night, she called off the wedding. Her family and friends were shocked, but she didn't hide the truth. She refused to carry the shame of someone else's betrayal. The week that followed was the hardest of her life. The dress hung untouched in her closet. The venue was canceled, and the dream she had clung to for years was gone. But slowly, she began to realize something. Walking away had been an act of strength, not loss. Months later, Isabella would look back on that moment at the apartment and see it for what it was, the truth revealing itself before it was too late. She had been saved from a lifetime of lies. And though the scars remained, they became a reminder of her worth, her dignity, and the fact that sometimes the greatest heartbreak is also the greatest rescue. 3 months had passed since Isabella walked away from Daniel and Melissa, but the echoes of that day still lingered in her mind. Nights were the hardest. The stillness made it impossible to ignore the memories. Sometimes, she'd find herself replaying the sound of his laugh, the way Melissa used to squeeze her hand during happy moments, and wonder how it had all turned into betrayal. But time, as always, kept moving. She threw herself into her work, taking on new projects and even traveling for business. It wasn't easy. Her trust in people had been fractured, but she began building small routines that made her feel whole again. Early morning jogs by the river, weekend trips to the farmer's market, evenings with her journal and a cup of herbal tea. Then, one rainy evening, as she was leaving a charity gala her company had sponsored, she saw him. Not Daniel, but a man she vaguely recognized from years ago. His name was Adrian Clark, a photographer she had met briefly at a friend's art exhibition. He was standing under the awning, camera slung over his shoulder, his dark hair slightly damp from the drizzle. "Isabella?" he said, a hint of surprise in his voice. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Adrian, wow, it's been years." They talked for a while, the conversation flowing more easily than she expected. Adrian had a warmth that reminded her of who she was before the betrayal. Curious, open, hopeful. He wasn't pushy, didn't ask probing questions about her past, just listened and made her laugh in that quiet, effortless way. Over the next few weeks, their paths kept crossing, at coffee shops and an art workshop she attended on a whim, even once at the grocery store. Slowly, cautiously, Isabella began letting him into her life. But one Saturday morning, as they sat in a cafe, Adrian reached across the table and said, "You have this strength in you, Isabella, like you walked through fire and came out sharper, brighter. But I also see you're still carrying the ashes." The words hit her harder than she expected. She realized she had been holding on to more than just a memory of Daniel's betrayal. She had been holding on to the fear that love would always end in pain. That night, she pulled out the box where she had kept her wedding invitations, photos, and the ring Daniel had given her. For the first time, she didn't cry. Instead, she packed everything into a paper bag, drove to the coast, and let the ocean take it. The waves carried away the remnants of a chapter she no longer needed. When she returned home, the quiet of her apartment no longer felt lonely. It felt peaceful. As she set her bag down, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Adrian. "Dinner tonight? My treat. No cameras, just us." A soft laugh escaped her lips as she read it. For months, she had carried the weight of betrayal like a stone in her chest. She had walked through days where the world felt gray and empty. But now, she realized she wasn't saying yes to Adrian out of loneliness. She was saying yes because she had rediscovered herself. Isabella had learned that healing didn't come from someone swooping in to fix her. It came from the quiet morning she chose to get out of bed, from the evening she cooked herself dinner just because she deserved something good, and from the moment she dared to dream about her future again. Adrian was a new chapter, but she was the author. The pain Daniel had caused no longer had power over her. She had taken back her story. And in doing so, she had found a strength she never knew she had. Looking out the window at the city lights, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Excitement for tomorrow. Not because it promised perfection, but because she knew she could handle whatever came. And somewhere deep inside, Isabella knew that the greatest rescue hadn't just been walking away from Daniel. It had been finding her way back to herself and falling in love with the woman she saw in the mirror. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. If Isabella's story brought a smile to your face or touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you never miss another heartfelt and inspiring story. Your support means everything to us. And remember, just like Isabella, you have the strength to turn the page and write a brighter chapter for yourself.